All right, Jane. How do you think about your career in a broader perspective than just your current role at an organization or company?
Yeah, I think that's a real important thing to think about. Sometimes you're so concentrating on your day-to-day requirements and work that you forget to step back a little bit and look at the broader picture. For me, that broader picture was women in the sciences and engineering, and I think it was a terribly important part of my career development to look at what was going on nationally and internationally in the field. I mentioned that I did some work with an international conference that kept me involved with international communities for years after that. But another experience I had in the United States that helped very much was to help start a professional organization for women and men that were doing the kind of work I was doing at Purdue. Since our program was the first in the country, a lot of people looked to Purdue for leadership and for guidance. And I was always grateful that the Dean of Engineering and the President of Purdue really thought that it was always important for Purdue people to be involved in national and international organizations and events. So in the 1980s, the end of the 1980s, it was a time when many engineering schools were beginning to add women in engineering programs. And so they were calling me, they were calling a good friend of mine at Stevens Institute of Technology that also had one of the first programs. And then there was a new director of women in engineering at the University of Washington, Suzanne Brainerd. And the three of us began to talk about how could we share what we'd learned without taking so much time on the telephone or email telling people about our programs. And so we went to the National Science Foundation and said, could we hold a national conference and invite deans of engineering, people that were doing the kind of work for women that we were doing. They thought it was a good idea. So they funded a meeting that we held in Washington, D.C. in 1989. And at the close of that meeting, it was attended by about 200 people. And the enthusiasm and the energy was so high at the end of that meeting, we said, what do you want to do to stay in touch? And so we talked about the American Society of Engineering Education, had a Women in Engineering Committee. The Society of Women Engineers had a Women Educators Committee. But everyone felt like when they were at those meetings, their focus was different. So they said, let's start our own organization. So the three of us looked at one another and said, okay, we're not sure how to do this, but we'll take a stab at it. And in 1990, we started the organization WePan. And this summer, we celebrated the 20th anniversary at our conference that was held in Austin, Texas. And again, we had about 200 to 250 people at the meeting, but this time it was a very nice fraction of the total membership, which is now almost 700 people. It's not only educational programs that are represented, but also corporate programs that are represented, because now many of the firsts or the newness of having women in engineering at universities is now the same in corporations. There aren't so many, there certainly aren't very many at senior levels, and so organizational issues are coming up that people that have been doing women in engineering programs at the colleges and universities for years seem to have some insight and some information that's useful. The most wonderful thing that's happened, that just brings me great pride to think that I even had a tiny part in the beginning of this organization, is this year they inaugurated a website called the WePan Knowledge Center. And you can go on that website and find out any information you could imagine. It's wonderful. It's amazing is what it is. But you can read articles that were written about research that's done on women that choose non-traditional careers. You can find out where in the United States there's a program for junior high school girls in the summer that they might find out about engineering. You can find out what corporations support activities for women in engineering. So it's just, it's a tremendous resource, and I can just see it growing and growing and growing. One of the things from my position here at the Luce Foundation is to hope that they expand it a little bit so that it'll be even more general than it already is to women in science as well. There's certainly many things that are appropriate and would cover both areas. Maybe it just needs a little bit of tweaking for some of the differences.
Sure. So what progress have you seen in women in science and engineering over your career? And with that, what do you think it will take to get them to the next level as well, to make continual progress?
I may be an optimist in this, but I honestly think we're at the last level. What's happened that's been the biggest change is from looking at the women as a problem to be changed. When I first started working at Purdue, that was certainly the sort of thought everyone had, was help women do engineering just like men have always done it. And over the years, that's changed very much to saying, what are the unique qualities that, whether it's women or other races, other ethnic groups, what do they bring to the scientific and the technical thought process that should be preserved, that's different, not assimilated, but what do they bring that makes a better solution, a better product, a better process, a better education? And so now we see, I would say in the last maybe 10 years at the most, we see universities and corporations saying, okay, how can we change? What organizational changes, what institutional changes would get the best work out of all of our students, out of all our employees, so that everyone can reach their full potential? So those are the changes that I've seen that I think are just terrific, and I honestly think our nation is going to benefit tremendously from looking at it in that way.
All right. Well, thank you, Jane Daniels, Program Director for the Henry Luce Foundation, for your time and advice.
You're welcome.